Welcome to Intuition Unleashed, a revolution in personal liberation. The go-to podcast that helps you access intuitive guidance combined with mental health and spirituality. Let your intuition guide you and unlock a life of true liberation. And now your host, Becc Nelson.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another edition of Intuition Unleashed. It's a revolution in personal liberation. I am your host, Becc Nelson, and I am the author of Cut the Shit, Reframe Your Thinking, Regain Your Life, and also a licensed therapist. My guest today is Barbara, affectionately known as the East Coast Dragon Lady. Welcome, Barbara.
Hello.
So Barbara and I have known each other for a few years. I always bring on people that I've had several conversations with, so I'm very familiar with them. What Barbara and I realized is that we actually don't live that far from each other. We're both on the East Coast. She's in Massachusetts. I'm in Rhode Island. That never happens, Barbara.
I know. I agree. That's why I often say I'm from the East Coast, right? Also because of my accent.
Yeah. So as you can hear, Barbara is originally from England. So she is not actually from the East Coast of Rhode Island, but, after a time, us New Englanders just sort of drag you in. And then when we were talking the other day, Barbara says that, yep, I'm a masshole now.
Yes, that is true, because I've learned that the only way to drive in Massachusetts is defensively.
Mm-hmm. So we call that a masshole. So Barbara is here to talk about her experiences with dragons, right? Mm-hmm. So she is known as the East Coast Dragon Lady. Now, I know everybody's hearing this because I certainly did. You hear this and you go, wait, what? Did you say dragons? Oh, yeah. So we're talking about dragon channeling, and then using why grounding is a very important tool to use for channeling. And we're using ancient wisdom for modern souls. That's what we titled this episode, because dragons have a very grounding, ancient wisdom that they're here to pass on. And I can't wait to really dig into this topic because it sounds it sounds very woo-woo. Obviously, it is very woo-woo. But I want to help you to understand how this experience has shaped Barbara's life, and then why they're here at this time to teach us. So Barbara is a dragon empowerment Reiki master. She's also an intuitive channel and a spiritual mentor who has spent over 30 years exploring energy medicine and interdimensional communication. As you can hear from her accent, she's originally from England. She now lives just outside of Boston, where she teaches others how to connect with dragon energy for empowerment, grounding, and spiritual transformation. Her work bridges ancient wisdom and modern awakening, reminding us that true power comes from grounding the mystical into the everyday life. And that's really what our show is about. We can talk about these woo-woo kind of topics, but how do we apply it to your everyday life so that you can use your own intuition the way that Barbara had to dig in? So Barbara, I can't wait to get into this topic, because as you know, people are listening to it going, what do you mean you talk to dragons? And this is a very interesting story. And you might find after this that you've been talking to dragons too.
Yeah.
So I ask all my questions this. Let me start with this, Barbara. Usually there's a lot of people can talk about a moment in their life when the universe is sort of handed you an unexpected opportunity for growth. So it's usually a moment that at the time didn't feel like it was a gift, probably maybe one of the most difficult times in your life for a lot of people. But as you've come to grow and learn, you realize that it's actually become a part of your path and purpose. So do you have a story like that? And if so, can you share it with us?
Sure. Yes, I do. And when you actually mentioned that when we talked the other day, I was like, I know exactly what that is. And I think a lot of people do, that there's like, you go, what was that? And it was at an ending. So it was my marriage had ended. I had divorced. I had several dogs that I used to walk each day in the local woods. And I remember this particular day. It was probably like late October, November. And I suddenly realized how vibrant the trees were, like the colors. And again, in New England, And on the East Coast, we have this beautiful season of colors and changing. And I've just got full body chill saying that. That's always confirmation, right? When you get the chill. And I was walking in the woods and I'm like, why am I now noticing? Before it was just brown leaves. And I noticed the reds, the oranges, just all these colors. And I was literally sort of in my head going, wow. And then out the corner of my eye, I heard this person speak to me. And I looked, and somebody just asked me this the other day. I was not surprised. I actually encountered Merlin. There he was, how I imagined Merlin in full, like full, what I call, the beard, the hat, the wizard, like the wizard with a staff in his hand. And he said, of course you're noticing it. It's time. Like time has come for you to wake up, I guess. And at the time I was like, wow. And I didn't go, whoa, why am I seeing Merlin? It was just like, oh, Merlin's. Now I've had up to that point no connection with Merlin. And I was just going on my journey, awakening on Reiki, all of that stuff. It really didn't start. I didn't start awakening until I came to the United States, which has led me down a whole different path as well. And so then every day that I would take my dog, Merlin would appear at some point with some little, sometimes funny, but would just like, sometimes it was like, how? Hi. And I was like, wow, but what stuck with me that he said that I had woken up. And as I said, I'd realized that I'd just seen trees dropping brown leaves, and suddenly I'm seeing all these colors. And I was like, wow, this is like amazing. And that's why I say Merlin has been with me at least for 30 years. In the conversations I've had with him since, apparently it's been many lifetimes. But that was really what was the signature of me realizing that and I actually use the analogy, and again, you do therapy. So I'd said that I had felt like for years, and I was in 24 years I was married, I'd felt like I was held back. And when I stepped out of that marriage, it was like I was catapulted into the universe. I literally felt like I'd literally been catapulted and everything started to wake up.
Wow. So, and how long ago was that?
That was 26 years ago.
Wow. So you're walking through the woods, not expecting anything. And then all of a sudden you notice all these beautiful colors, and then Merlin shows up, and you knew instinctively that that's who that was.
Yeah. And I still to this, somebody asked me, like, weren't you scared when I relayed this the other day? And I was like, no, I wasn't. I just sort of accepted that, oh, this looks like he was a wizard. He's actually not very tall either, which again sort of surprised me. But just a fascinating, like literally, he looked real to me. And I hadn't mentioned it until years later. But Merlin then was sort of in my ear, is what I can say. Merlin would show up in lots of different parts of my life, sort of encouraging me. And that's what he is to me. He uses the words, he is my connector. And I have to say it that way because he's British, and he says he's a very old British person.
Oh, you know what? I didn't think of that. You're right.
So he's very correct. And he likes to pop up. So he will pop up and like remind me that he has been my connector in many things. He's connected me to most of the things I've encountered since I met him.
Wow. So that was really the beginning of your spiritual journey as you remember it in this lifetime.
Yes. Yeah.
You bring up a very important point. This has come up in a lot of the stories that some of my guests have talked about, that it's more of a remembering. It's sort of how you put it out there. And that's what a lot of guests will say, that we've had many lifetimes, we've incarnated many times. And so this is something that once you actually, this person comes back to you, this is like, oh, my old friend. So that's why it doesn't feel scary to you.
Yes. Yeah. And I'd say I've had conversations with Merlin since, because he also, at one point also, so he likes to shapeshift. So he will shapeshift into a dragon as well. So he's featured in some of my dragon. So he said that I have been his dragon, he has been my dragon. Most of my incarnations with him, I was his scribe. So he calls it a scribe, not a writer. So, and he will show me a quill, pen, and parchment paper and said, I used to write for him.
Whoa.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
wow. So I have to also tell people that when you and I get talking, we can just go. I think the last time we were on a phone call together, it was like an hour and a half. And it's like, where did that go? So we really are trying to, I want to get out a lot of information here. So
Yeah.
Is that when your personal awakening sort of unfolded?
That feels like that was when I started to remember. It probably, so if I go back just quickly to when I lived in England, I was a nurse, I'm an RN, and I spent quite a few years being a visiting nurse. And often I had a couple of people tell me that I was a healer. And back then I basically brushed it off like, yeah, of course. Well, and actually, one of the patients that I had said to me, well, you know that the reason you're a nurse is because you put hands on people. And when you touch people, you heal them. And again, at that time, I was like, that's nice. Yes, of course, I touch people.
I'm a nurse. Yes.
I'm a nurse. That's what we do. And that's why I chose to actually go into the field of like visiting nursing, because I wanted to continue putting hands on people, not doing, as an RN, you could have gone and done a lot of other things. And it was just, yeah, so when I started to wake up here, I started to remember, oh, I was a healer. And then what I found was that once I started to remember I started to remember more and more things. And again, Merlin was there in the early days to sort of really cheer me on and say, yes, you're absolutely right. Yes, you were a healer. Yes, you did touch people. And then I'm actually not far from Salem, Massachusetts, which is where the witch trials were. And I know I've probably had a lifetime there as well. So it all started to make sense, was why did I choose this part of the United States?
You would think that with that tragedy, you'd want to get as far away from there as you possibly could.
And I do try and stay away from Salem, because the times that I've been there, I get very nauseated, spacey. Yeah, I don't particularly like being there. Sometimes, actually, at one point, my older son lived in Salem, so I couldn't avoid it.
And what people, we probably live equidistant from Salem, and
Right.
Salem's actually a very beautiful little community.
It is. It's on the ocean, so you've got like port there. It's a lot of old, very old energy there. Yeah,
a beautiful park, and it's really cute.
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
So interesting that Merlin decided to come out during the fall when the leaves were falling, because traditionally when you were here, when the leaves come down, for me, it's like, oh, we have so many trees in our yard. Your yard is covered in leaves.
Yes.
They take forever to get rid of. And just when you clear them up, which my husband did just yesterday, they're back. The next day they're back. You might as well not even bother. But what I heard very recently is that which made sense to me, the trees cannot survive if they keep their leaves for the winter, because then they pull all their energy for growth and survival into the trunk. And so if they continue to have their leaves, then they don't have, they can't survive. So that's sort of the same way as probably why Merlin came out to you for that very symbolic time. Like, it's time to put the energy back into you, into your own growth and development. And how symbolic is that? So, okay. So how did you go from there to talk about when the dragons came out? How did that unfold?
So in a quick, like a second ago, I went from meeting Merlin to then discovering Reiki. And after I did a couple of modalities of Reiki, I was doing energy work. Then when, say, after my divorce, I always say life happened. So life happened, right? I had 2 teenage boys when I divorced. As a single mom, I was working 2 jobs. Life just happened. And a lot of that stuff, a lot of my energy work, I mean, all fell away. I was too busy keeping a roof over our head, working 2 jobs, making sure I got them through school, all of that stuff. And they had their own challenges. And so I was busy with that. And it wasn't until things settled down for me, and actually just prior to COVID, and I think a lot of us have this time of where you can pinpoint it was during COVID or so just before COVID, I'd started to think maybe I should start thinking more about the energy work that I used to do. What do I want to do now? And then during that time that we were forced to all be at home, I decided for myself to go on my own journey to see where it took me. And I didn't have expectations. And I think what I realized was important about that is I didn't say what outcome I wanted. I just said, take me on a journey, show me what I need. What do I need to reconnect with? Let's see what happens. And I felt like I went down a lazy river. I went over here a bit, over here a bit here. No, that's not for me. Tried a few communities, kept going. And during that time where I was feeling I was making some headway into, I think I want to maybe I met some people that were doing different types of Reiki, one being Dragon Empowerment Reiki. And then it was in the summer, so which was about 4 years ago. And I try and get out as much as I can to walk. I'm at the age where I need to move my body, like all of us do. And I was literally, and often when I would go for walks, like go in the woods or wherever, would oftentimes when I would receive messages, and that's part of being a channel, right? It was almost like a radio antenna. When I went out for a walk, because I can't just sit and meditate. I'm not somebody that can sit and quiet my mind. But when I walk, I'm doing something else. And I've realized that is what works for me. And I live pretty high elevation. So I'm at the top of a hill. And I kept hearing, look up, look up. So I looked up. And when I looked up, there were huge dragons. And that's the only way I can describe it. And again, I'm going to say, you can take this or leave this, but I do have pictures. I can send you the picture. I took pictures of them. And I saw dragons flying. They were like flying onto, like coming down, huge dragon. I mean, I just about got them in, just landing on clouds. And they were literally flying across through clouds and sort of like almost like buzzing me. And I'd never like once thought about dragons. They hadn't been in my childhood. They weren't in my vocabulary. And I remember thinking, wow, this is awesome. But also I need to take pictures because I needed to prove to myself what I was seeing in the clouds. Now, lots of cloud, oftentimes, and I'm close to the ocean, so I often get clouds coming in and going out. But these were dragons. And when I got back, thankfully I had my cell phone with me. I could open up them a little bit more and I could see their faces. And I was like, holy shit, why am I seeing dragons? Was all I can say. I was like, why am I seeing dragons? I'd never heard anybody talk about seeing dragons, talking to dragons. I remember sending out some emails to people going, why am I seeing dragons? And the response was, I have no idea. Absolutely no idea. I didn't meet anybody that said, oh, and I went, I don't know what that means. But I thought, okay, I guess I'll put it in there. I don't know what it means pile and wait and see what happens. Because one thing I learned was don't disbelieve it, just put it there and see what happens, right? So it was probably a week, maybe 2 weeks. And then I started to hear messages from them. And they were telling me, they called themselves, we're your sky dragons. We are here to work with you. And I was like, oh, cool. And it sort of developed from, though there were about 6 dragons at the time. And then I did start meeting people that had said, oh, yes, I talk to dragons, or, oh, I've been working with, actually, I met one person that said they'd been working with dragons for 25 years and another person about 20 years. And I was like, oh, cool. And I'm like, so I started to ask them, so why have you appeared to me now? And what what's this all about? And they started to teach me about what dragons are, why they were here. And I always tell people what I know is what they told me. And I know you're going like dragons in the sky. How would we see them?
Okay.
They were there. And I know, and I literally do have photographs to show you, and they're undeniably dragons. I have one that has got a huge and he's landing on a cloud.
They show up on a picture on your cell phone?
Yes, they did. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That part I had not heard before, Barbara. You do need to forward me those pictures. I would love to see that. Okay. Yeah. So, and at this point, when they're showing up, you're kind of wowed because what am I seeing?
I was more fascinated because I'd only so also prior to that, and things that, as you know, in the spiritual world, they either all happen at once or there's nothing at all, right? So at the same time, I had only recently embraced the fact that I was a channel, because prior to that, I used to say that I did automatic writing, which anybody that knows, basically automatic writing is channel message writing, but I hadn't claimed the channeling, because to me was more like, yeah, I'm not sure about the channeling, but I can automatic write. And when it was brought to my attention by somebody that said that I was actually channeling, not doing automatic writing, and I said out loud, and I think what I've realized is what we have to say those things out loud. When I said, wow, I'm a channel, everything changed and everything shifted. And that's sort of when the dragons showed up, because what they said to me was that they realized they could speak to me. And sometimes they don't always speak, but they realized they could speak to me. I could hear them, and they got really, really excited because they were like, you can hear us, you can talk to us. Oh my goodness, we have so much to tell you.
That is what the same, me as a medium and other mediums have said the same thing. It's like they get so excited that they can actually speak through somebody, that then they put a lot of energy into that.
And not just dragons, usually any galactic, whatever. I mean, once I started to channel like everybody. It was like, oh, she can hear us. I think anybody, even if it's a soul that is on the other side, right? I know mediums, that oftentimes they're like, oh, you can hear us, oh, we can speak to you, right? Because it's exciting that we've connected. Mm-hmm. And I think since I made that connection with dragons, and more people have woken up to that, and then what I found was other people were connecting me to other people, and it over the past 3 or 4 years. I mean, this isn't just in the United States. It goes as far as Australia, England, Canada, and the United States. There was a group of people that came together called Dragon Thunder. And it was a one day, like, let's see who's going to show up. And it's gone on from there. And literally people across, I call it international now. And dragons are everywhere and are showing up and working with people in many different ways, not just channeling. They're doing lots of other work with people. But I just channel them and work with them to really bring those messages to people.
Wow. So they've kind of communicated to you from the conversations we've had about they're sort of back. They're in the human consciousness now. So what have they explained to you about why they're here?
So they say, so there was a group, so I mainly connect with collectives. I also discovered that so collectives are a whole group of dragons, where some people connect to individual. I do have individual dragons, but when they realized that they could connect with me, it was a collective of dragons that were actually on their way to Earth. And again, that was a bit like, okay, well, where are you? And they were like,
from
oh,
where,
we're
right?
out in the galaxy, because they're going, we're on our way to Earth. And I'm like, whoa, wait, this is, first of all, I'm talking to dragons, and now you're telling me that you're coming from where? And they were like, oh, we're coming from other galaxies, other star systems, other planets. We're all coming together to bring in, and what we needed 3 or 4 years ago and now was to bring this energy that is very loving, and very nurturing. And they realized humanity needed this energy to come, and it's guardian energy, and it's also elder energy. So a lot of people are waking up to their elder selves and remembering their past lives and remembering all of that. And this is all comes together. So not is it just galactic and dragons, it's people waking up to who they truly are. And we've seen that over the last 2 or 3 years. More and more people are waking up to what they have been, what they could be. You know, there's that past, present, and future whole aspect to it. So it's more than, and again, for me, it was like, whoa, what else are you going to tell me? Because and this energy came in really, really fast. And what I realized was, so they were talking to me a lot, and I was trying to capture what they were saying. And then what happens to a lot of us humans, and the dragons forget sometimes we're human, is if they overload us with information, and I kept saying yes, 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 was I physically got sick. And it was then that the dragons said, oh, we forget you're human. So they said, we need to step back. So what I learned from that was, don't let, like, we need to also allow them to do as much as they can, but we also are only human, and there's only so much we can take before it will actually affect ourselves physically. So we've now got a very good working relationship, is probably what I would say.
So you have to kind of put up some boundaries with them and realize when you're getting too overloaded and you need to take a break.
Right. Yes. And it was, I had to visit, and oftentimes, you know, as humans, we have to hit that wall. And it wasn't that I needed to say, well, you need to back off. I needed to realize it as well, because I was excited because this was all new. And I also had to say, and what they then said was, we're going to back off and you can invite us to come in, invite us when you're ready. And it was very odd not to have any of that. So I'd had all this intense chatter and energy and stuff, and then they literally backed off. And I was like, whoa, what happened? I hadn't realized how much was happening.
And you got sick. Okay, fascinating. So we're going to be going to a 2-minute break, but when we come back, we're going to talk more with Barbara about why the dragons are here now, what messages they have for us, and what it feels like to act for Barbara to actually channel the energy of these dragons. Okay, see you after the break. Hello, everyone. We're back for the second half of our interview with the East Coast Dragon Lady, Barbara Worsley. Barbara, we were talking about why dragons are here in this here and now. What do they have to share with us? And we were having a great conversation during the break about how other animals are dragons can actually shapeshift and show up as other animals in our life. Yes. I was sharing about my horse, and you were talking about your dog. So tell us a little bit about
yes. So it isn't unusual. And again, this has taken me a few years to digest. So I'm sure for some people, they're like, what? I mean, again, this is my belief system. I mean, I've always known, especially cats. We know that cats are from other planets, right? Anybody that has a cat, you know, they're clearly not from here. I've got my current cat, she's like a Lyran, and you know, she will just sit there and look at me, and her eyes become very galactic. But so I had a small. Well, he was on the bigger end of a min pin, so miniature pincer. So most people think of like a little 10-pound dog. He was 20 pounds. He was a rescue. He'd been in many, many homes. I mean, he had a horrible like trauma history. He was one of those dogs that I used to say will nip first and ask questions later, right? He was a nipper, not really a biter, and he really didn't like anybody. He's very protective of us. So, you know, you take your dogs out for a walk and all of that stuff. So one day I was taking my dog outside. I live in a condo. And I had 2 guardian dragons that were out there. And they were like, wait a minute. What are you doing with that dragon? And I said, no, this isn't a dragon. This is a dog. They were like, no, you're restraining a dragon. And that's the history of drag. A lot of dragons have been captured, restrained. So they get very upset if they think that as humans, we're doing that. So I was explaining to them, no, this is the dog. And we put a harness on the dog. And they're like, no, that is a dragon. You have a dragon. So I'm like, okay. So we used to joke and say, oh, well, the dog's a dragon. That makes sense. Now, the dog had diabetes and sadly landed up hospitalized about a year before he died. And he had his blood sugar dropped to where he became almost unconscious. Rushed him he was there for about 4 days. Now, people that knew me, who also communicated with animals, said, can we connect with him? Just see what's going on. And two or three people came back and said, did you know he's a dragon? And I said, well, yes, I had been told that. And they were like, oh, he was telling us he's been doing too much and that he forgets that he's getting old and that he's got to cut back on whatever dragon stuff he was doing. And I'm like, okay, that makes sense. He bounced back from that, which, the hospital at one point was going, we don't know if he's going to literally within a couple of days, his blood sugar was back. He was back to his normal self. So with diabetes and older dogs, it takes a toll on them. And time was coming where we knew it was just a matter of time before it was time for him to cross. His kidneys weren't functioning properly. His diabetes wasn't under control. And my vet had said, we'll leave it up to you. When it's time, this particular day, I was having a healing session from somebody who also connected with dragons. And while she was talking with me, she said, Barbara, a dragon has just landed behind you. What's behind you? And I said, oh, my dog's asleep on there. And she said, the dragon's shown up for him. And I said, oh, she goes, I think it's time. And I said, yeah, after I finished with you, that was my next phone call. So, we know that process. So I take the dog to the vets, we get all set up. And as he transitioned, I saw this smaller dragon take him across the Rainbow Bridge. And about halfway across, they gave him his dragon wings and he flew off. And it was just like, it was sad, but it was also like, oh, he's free. Now, if you don't believe that, a few months later, I had been asked to do a in-person session. I'd never done this before. Somebody had asked me if I could trans channel a dragon. And I'm like, I don't know, but I'm willing to try. These were people that did past life regression. So it was recorded, and somebody was watching the recording and said, over your solar plexus was this orb that appeared. And she said, I'm confused because it looked like a dog dragon. Oh. And I said, oh, that was my dog. So somebody actually saw in an orb, my dog is still floating around me. So
that didn't know that story.
They didn't know that story. They said, why am I seeing a dog's face, but it's a dragon? So I can't my disclaimer is, I can't make this stuff up.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So let's go into that for a minute, because you've mentioned channeling a couple of times. Yes. Can you describe what channeling a dragon energy kind of feels like for you?
Right. Yeah. So it's sort of, and again, everybody channels their own way, is what I understand. For me, the other question I had for the dragon was, why is it so easy for me to talk to you? And they said, oh, and this is why I say grounding. They said, well, for years, you have been grounding yourself every day. So one of my morning rituals is to ground myself. Now, I'm a Pisces, so I can tend to sort of float off planet a little bit. So I always know that I have to ground myself really well. So I was doing that, and they had said to me, because over the years you've been doing this and you're very firmly connected to Mother Gaia, it allows you to reach higher vibrations. So the deeper that, this is the message I got, was the deeper you ground, the higher vibration. And that means that you can just keep going up. And that was why it was easy for me to connect with the dragons. Now, I don't have to, as I said, I can't sit and meditate. For me, it's like they're just over my shoulder. And I often say that. I'll be like, oh, Merlin's here. Oh, the dragons are here. Because that's just what it feels like. It's like, you know that feeling that somebody's behind you? It's just, and it's not creepy. It's just like, oh. And sometimes, and again, I connect with the collective. So it tends to be more like I feel an intense energy. And then I will hear you, and then I hear they will just start speaking to me like I'm speaking to you. And at times, so I do have, they're comedians. So at times they will start giving me answers. They will start whispering in my ear, like I've done something, people will be talking and they'll be going, they're not telling you the truth. I mean, they're very truthful dragons. They'll be like, that person's not telling you the truth. Or they go, no, 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 no. Or they will like literally show up and it feels like if you could see them, they're all peering over my shoulder. And apart from the comedy side of it, I say they're like my two boys when they were teenagers. They have the knock jokes and they start falling about, laughing about things. And I'm like, what's funny? So that they've got a very lighter side to them. Their energy isn't heavy. It's and it's always to the point. It's not like long conversations. It's done. And that was so. For me, when I hear that, I can sometimes when I'm speaking, they will just give me a message and I say, oh, this is what they're saying. And I think that's true for mediums, right? Is you'll be speaking and then you just know that you've got, and it's like, I learned this doing Reiki, that if I got messages, I couldn't change the message. So if somebody said something to me that didn't make sense, it wasn't for me to change it. So when I spoke what I heard, it made sense for that person. So it's the same thing. They will sometimes give me messages for somebody, or they will just give me a running commentary on whatever's going on at the time. But they are here to help all of us. Well, for me, it was they needed to help me open my heart more. They're reminding me, they're very heart-centered. They always say they have these huge hearts in the center of their chest, huge. And when they open their wings, that heart energy goes into their wings and then they wrap that around you. So it's like you get this big heart. It's just warm, heart-centered energy. Now, I was somebody like a lot of us that had shut my heart down. I protected it. I was like, no, you can all stay away. They were the ones that helped me open that.
And is that what their main focus is, to help you to open your heart?
That was what I needed to do, to be more aware. So because when we shut down any of our systems, it shuts down our awareness. So by opening my heart up, it allowed me to be more open to all the other things that I was going to encounter. And it was really very special. It was actually, I went on a meditative journey. I was in a class. I went on a journey to inner earth, and two dragons took me and dropped me in. And while I was there viewing this, inner earth is beautiful. A lot of people don't get to see it because nobody wants to come back from inner earth. These dragons appeared, and I'd never met my dragons to that point. I'd always talked to collectives. And it was about 5 or 6 of them literally came from the distance and right in my face. And they were all different colors, and their faces and eyes were different colors. And they asked me to hold their faces like this and look into their eyes. And when I did that, I literally felt my heart burst open. It was literally, and it was about 6 of them I did that to. And they then said that the doors and windows of my heart had blown open because I needed that much intense, that unconditional love to burst it open. And that's what it's been like ever since.
Well, so that was my next question. Do they need to remind you to do that every once in a while, or is that just
No,
something that's
it's like I've got this, and that's sort of we go down a whole nother path. Like, so they've recently shown me memories of actually being a dragon myself, and I've met other people that have had these memories. And again, the veil is getting thin for a lot of us that do not just work with dragons, that are doing spiritual work, energy work. The veil has become very thin, not just on Halloween or special moon. It's very thin. And I've been told that the veil has virtually disappeared for me. So I'm able to, and I have experienced going back to past lives for like in a blink of an eye for a split second to sort of see myself somewhere. And I've seen myself as a dragon. And it was funny because I was at the top of a hill roaring. And I thought that was like very freeing to be able to roar like a dragon.
so are they basically here to support intuitives and energy healers?
Yeah, well, they're here to literally help. Well, a lot of beings are here to help us with our ascension. But they saw that a lot of people needed to wake up to the memories of their previous lives. So to stand in, and like I was woken up to my elder self, so that I know that I hold that. So elders in lots of communities are very reverend. People sort of listen to them. And they told me that one of my gifts is, and I've had to embrace this, is storytelling. And that's why I have to, as I say, I could just keep talking because they just keep giving me energy. But they wanted me to embrace that, right? Because for the longest time, it got me into trouble. But now it's like I have stories with a purpose.
Okay. So you had mentioned that you were getting sick and they said, oh, we forgot that you're human. So you've had to learn to realize to put in some boundaries for yourself, for your own discernment right. and safety. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think it was more about balancing out that energy because if we, and again, when you open yourself up to be a channel or you are automatically, I mean, most people are born with that intuition. We don't always tap into it. But we can be open to way too much, right? So for me, thankfully, the dragons have kept it. I've asked a couple of times, like, can I channel other things? They were like, of course you can. I could do that, but I've kept it mainly to dragons. It's sort of a few other things have popped up, but it's just been that way. But I think for me, it was finding the balance between not being too open and it's not that I say, oh, 9 o'clock, you can start talking to me, right? Because they don't know time. They would, but they're more respectful of the boundary, because that's what we have to do in a lot of things. Like we can't keep being open to all of that, and for a lot of us, it can actually, affect our physical body if we do too much of that. And sometimes after channeling, a lot of people find they need several days. So if I do maybe after this, when you do a lot of that work, you've got to take care of yourself, right? So
well, okay, so you're making a good point. What are some of the things that you've discovered that are like signs that to remind you that, okay, it's time for me to take a little break. I need to do some grounding. And then what are some techniques to be able to do that?
Honestly, grounding. And I will say I've talked to so many different people and so many people that do this work go, oh, that's the one thing I forget. Like I know lots of people that do massage therapists and I often say to them, do you ground yourself? Do you protect yourself? And they go, oh, yeah, I forget to do that. It's very easy to forget. Because it's not natural to us. Cleaning our teeth is, but saying, oh, I must ground myself, right? Because it's also a protection. So by grounding ourselves and connecting us, I say it's connecting to Mother Gaia. For me, I'd been connecting for years, and it wasn't until somebody introduced me to the quantum field and talked about connecting my roots to the core of the earth. And I was like, that, because I used to like wrap around a rock, that was to me was like I was wrapped around a rock deeply underground, but they were like go into the core. And as I did that, the first time I did it, I said it was like my roots went into the core and it was locked and loaded. I felt like a click, and then literally everything woke up. That it sort of the energy came up, and I suddenly, whoa, now everything's talking to me. Everything's it was like you need that connection to Mother Gaia because she needs us. So oftentimes she will say, not only does she transmute our energy, but she needs it. And it's like this recycling. We need to give it to her. She needs to give it to us so we can take that out into the world. And that goes with, I don't know what they're telling me, but this about healing ourselves heals other people. So they're showing me that like we need to heal ourselves. And by doing that, by being whole and healed, we in turn can help other people. Because when one person does it, 1,000 people get healed. So it's not being selfish. And that's why they want us to keep that balance with Mother Gaia. And the dragons have always been very insistent on connecting, giving the energy back to, because she's hurting right now. We can see that.
And for those of you that don't know, Mother Gaia is basically the earth.
Yes.
Connecting to the earth energy. And is that something that you have come up a lot when you channel the dragons, that they are telling us to connect to the energy of the earth?
Connect with, they always say that we need to be respectful to her because, she's doing a lot that we don't see. and so do other beings as well. It's not just dragons, but dragons, I think for a lot of people, they think of them as very earthy. They're the earth elements, a lot of them. But they're also galactic. I mean, they literally are. And you asked me earlier about shape shifting. So yes, dragons will tell me not only will they become, but they, so they're at the vibration. So they always tell me it's not the same, but they're at the same vibration as like ascended masters, because every angel's ascended masters, they're high frequency. So that means that, they can shapeshift into something else if that's what we need, because it's for us. Because not everybody wants to see a dragon. Sometimes you can't see the whole dragon. That's the other thing.
Okay, say a little bit about that.
So what I've learned, and this is again by people coming to me or by talking about it, that dragons will often show themselves in smaller ways. So the number one, I would say, is that people see quite a big eye. And it's not like a creepy eye. You can clearly tell that it's just a very big, brightly colored eye. And often when people say, oh, I've been seeing this eye, a few days later, the dragon will reveal themselves, whichever is the best way for that person. A lot of people see out the corner of their eye like a shimmer or scales will show up in some other way. Because they're subtle. They don't want to scare us. And they're very aware that they've got very big energy and very big. I mean, there are a few little dragons that like to run around. And so that also reminded me another story. So when I said I woke up to things, so one of the realms that I hadn't touched was the fairy realm. And I don't know why, but I was out walking again, and I kept hearing these little voices say to me, hey, over here, we've got fairy dragons. We've got fairy dragons. And the fairies wanted to share with me that they had dragons too. They're small dragons, but that's they thought that was a good way to connect with me. And what they pointed out to me was that every time that I was grounding, so this is for all of us, as we ground, we're going through their realm. So we're putting our roots down through their realm. And they were like, hey, you keep coming through our realm. Could you stop a minute and talk to us? So I learned to stop and talk to the fairies. And then they took me, one day they said, go out and look with fairy eyes. When you're on your walk, just look through fairy eyes. And they showed me fascinating things that I wouldn't have seen, like their circles. They called them fairy circles. So even in the like moss that grows in circles, that coming through the trees, the light coming through the trees, they were all saying, this is proof that we're here, we're fairies. And again, I love to take photos, and people saw in the orbs that were in the trees fairies or people's faces. So fairies like orbs, dragons like orbs. Everybody likes to like orb around, I think.
Wow. Blowing our minds here. Do you think that all of us have dragons? It's just a matter of whether we're opening ourselves up to their wisdom or not?
Yes. Yeah. I think, I mean, and again, it's not for everybody to wake up. So they're dragons. Sometimes they will, like a lot of, archangels and other beings, they come in and they come out of our lives when we need them. But they also reminded me that the history of dragons, and again, I'm originally from England, but other countries as well, use dragons as they would place them on churches and like houses, and they would put them on walls as protection, because that's how in England, in Wales, there's a dragon on the flag of the Welsh flag. So there's myths around, and they're saying that they're not myths, they were real, but people want to say they're myths, because again, it's what you choose to believe. But dragons are, because they're a high vibrational, we don't see them, but they will show themselves if necessary. And the same as names, often people will say, what's my dragon's name? So this is where they get funny. They really, well, they will say the name they have, we probably can't even pronounce, right? Because it's not in our vocabulary. So I got a lot of people saying, oh, can you tell me my dragon's name? So they got really funny and started giving me really old-fashioned names like Martha, Ethel, Edward. I mean, really old names. And I'm like, okay, you're being funny. And they were like, well, you want a name? We'll give you a name. So, it isn't, they say it's not necessary to have a name to connect with them. You can call them, hey, dragon, or the blue dragon, or whatever. They know who they are.
You're mentioning that they're in, ancient times, they're on flags, etc. So they've really historically been known as protectors.
Yeah, always. Yeah. And there is, and I often say there is also, and I think, in the cinema, in movies, dragons are often portrayed as the bad guys, right? Because they're flames coming out, they're burning things. I mean, in Game of Thrones, they were burning people. They go, that isn't my dragon. These are my dragons. They go, that's not us. What they say is you will often see what looks like fire coming out, but that's energy. So when like the fire dragon will clear your path with what looks like fire, but it's just energy, and that wouldn't burn you. So if you see a dragon, they're not here to harm us. They're here to clear our paths, to make sure that we're on the right path.
You also have developed, with their guidance, an oracle deck, the Intergalactic Guardians Dragons of the Multi-Universe.
Yes.
That they insisted on the design for.
They insisted on the name. They were I called them very prescriptive. These particular dragons were the first dragons that I saw coming. And they said their purpose was to come. They would show me that like a rainbow in a cloud. So you've seen those like rainbow that just appears, just a bit of rainbow, not a full rainbow. And that was because they were this full range color of dragons coming, and they were guardians and elders bringing in. And interestingly, when I was mentioning this before I developed my oracle deck, people were saying in other countries that they were seeing those rainbows in clouds, and they were saying, I think your dragons have arrived here. I think your dragons arrived there. So I know we're going to, but yes, so the they were very prescriptive, the dragons, and they told me exactly what to do, what colors they wanted. They even gave me the Crayola color names, which again, if you want proof, they said, these are the colors and these are the names. And then my friend who was doing the actual art said, what? And looked it up. And sure enough, the names they gave were the colors of the Crayola palette that they wanted. So they were very interesting to work with because they wanted me to do things in certain orders for certain reasons. And I followed their direction.
Well, who's going to say no to a dragon? So you actually have a special offer for our listeners. You're going to offer a $30 dragon oracle card reading, a message for $30 for our listeners. So they're going to, they're going to email you, and that's all in the show notes, how to reach you. And in the subject line to put my name, Becc Nelson, and they'll get a $30 oracle reading from you. And of course, I need one, Barbara. I have to have. And so what are some of the takeaways that you want? We have 2 minutes left. What are some of the takeaways that you'd like to give people today?
I would probably say the takeaways, if a dragon has appeared in your life, or maybe after this, they may, because they do have a habit of, you talk about them and they will show up in some way in your life. And I have many stories about that, of people that have just said, yeah, dragons. And within a week, some sort of dragon will show up. I think it's just like they are here to help us, and they're very heart-centered, very loving. And even though they're big, they want to just bring us that love and just help us all move into the new world.
Our dragons, you're saying, are here for all of us to help us in our greater good. Barbara, thank you so much for being with us today and sharing the wisdom of your dragons and helping us to learn about grounding. And I want to remind everybody that we are here to help you unleash your intuition. And when you unleash your intuition, you are claiming your power. So thank you for helping us today, and join the revolution, everyone.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thanks, Barbara.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning into this episode of Intuition Unleashed. We hope you found it informative and thought-provoking. But before you go, we have one little challenge for you. Most of us have sneaky little habits that hold us back and trip us up, so why not take this not at all uncomfortable quiz to find out what you do to derail yourself from achieving your goals, and how you can